All right. Well, I'm here with Cody Stryker. Cody, tell us a little bit about yourself. What years you went to LVC? What do you do now? That sort of thing.
All right. Yeah, I was at LVC from 2012 to 2016. Got a job at Clark Associates relatively soon after graduation. I started there in June of 2016 after graduating in May. So didn't have to wait around too long. But I've been there for 5 years. Really enjoy it. Currently, I'm a senior vendor manager working with our stainless steel and plumbing categories. Um, it's been I've worked with a lot of different product categories and touched on a lot of different areas of our company. So it's been an interesting growing experience, but I really
So,
like where I'm at.
what is it that Clark and Associates or Clark Associates does?
We are pretty much like a wholesale restaurant equipment distributor. We have a website called the Webstaurant Store. That's basically the Amazon for restaurants. Um, Anyone from a mom and pop shop to, we work with national chains like Chick-fil-A, Subway. They can come and get their anything from a sugar packet to a walk-in freezer. We can provide it for them.
Hmm. And so, like, why are they based in Lancaster County, or it's just happenstance?
Um, it's kind of happenstance. So Clark Associates started as an electrical contracting company, and back in the day, all the food service equipment in the Lancaster area was mostly electric. There wasn't much gas equipment around back then. So Clark Associates was servicing all this restaurant equipment, and eventually they said, "Hey, why don't we sell the restaurant equipment as well?" So they started getting into the act of procuring the equipment, and then they could replace it for people or sell it to them directly and then be their service agent, and just kind of grew from there. After that, they launched we have these brick and mortar stores called the restaurant store. There's 11 of those, but that's kind of like it's kind of like a Home Depot full of restaurant equipment. You can walk in and get anything you need, small wares up to refrigeration or spices, consumables, coffee,
Wow.
disposables. Yeah.
And so, tell us, I guess, or at least so when you went and worked there, what kinds of stuff were you doing? Because as I recall, you were a history communications
hmm
major. So were you like writing ad copy or stuff like that, descriptions? You must buy this walk-in freezer.
um, no, I didn't start in content or anything. When I first started, I was just kind of looking for an entry level position. After graduation, I didn't have like a set plan of what I wanted to do. Toyed around with the idea of grad school, but decided it wasn't for me. And then, just started doing a lot of like administrative work, paying bills and placing orders, things like that. And then kind of grew my list of responsibilities from there up to the point now where I manage our contracts and negotiations with 17 domestic vendors that I'm responsible for.
Wow. And do you have people working for you, or are you just sort of solo?
We have a full team. We have a team of about 9 people. I kind of co-manage it with another guy, and then working directly with me. I have one dedicated employee, and then a few others on our team help out when needed.
Okay.
Mhm.
So as I have often done, so kind of, if you don't mind, tell us like somebody who's starting off. If you get hired right out of LVC, and as I recall, you also there are a lot of people from LVC. So
Mhm.
what do they make? And then what does this is a company that's growing fast, which has a lot of advantages, right? So you can move
Mhm.
up or move up and over or into different things. So just, I guess, get down to the dirty business of like what kind of money they'd make, what kind of benefits people make, that kind of thing, just so students
Right.
have some idea of what's going on, what you could
Right.
expect.
Yeah. I would say 2016 was kind of a different time. It wasn't that long ago, but I started in a lower level position. I was making about um, hmm, like $15 to $20 an hour in that range. So it was okay money. You know,
Hmm.
I was living at home at the time and, didn't have too many bills besides student loans. So it was doable for me in that situation. Certainly couldn't do it on that now, but, you kind of adapt to what you are making. My salary's more than doubled at this point in the 5 years that I've been there.
Wow.
That's been through several different positions, but they give generous raises. Our end of year raises are typically $5,000 at and $1,000 bonuses. It's a lot of incentives. We're a growing company. You may not see that everywhere, but in our position, we're growing and we're cash strong. So they like to reward the employees for that.
Okay. And then what kinds of things did you do starting out, or talk a little bit more about that? And then how does like, did you seek out positions, or did they just basically say, hey, Cody, I like the way that you interact with people, or just like the cut of your jib, and why don't we try you over here?
Yeah, I was given a few opportunities like that where they were reorganizing some teams and they said, hey, we need someone to handle, this set of responsibilities. It's between you and one other person. Do you want to take it? And I said, yeah, I'll take it. And,
Right.
you know, and it's in the business world. So, they're assuming you want more compensation for your effort and the more responsibility that you're taking on.
Right.
So that kind of rolls into any type of like title or role change you take on. They say, okay, what do you want? And they're open for negotiations like that
Okay.
too. Even when you're in the organization, if something opens up or you think you're doing more or have more responsibility and kind of want that evaluated, they're usually open to, um, they want their employees to be happy. It's expensive to go find, train new people to
Right.
take on all that new work. And it's usually easier for them to kick you a little bit more money and keep you happy and keep you around.
That's a refreshing management style, to be honest. I'm familiar with others, which are more like, universities are more like, take really smart people and then make them miserable, and then then watch them, see if they'll
Yeah.
produce.
We're lucky. We're still family owned. It's in the third generation now. And a lot of the DNA is still we're a $2 billion company, and a lot of the DNA is still, kind of like mom and pop type of
Right.
business. It's kind of refreshing and nice. There's not a lot of bureaucracy, and they empower the employees to make a lot of decisions. And their big thing is hire smart, hardworking people, give them some basics, teach them the industry, and then get out of their way.
Right. Right. No, that's great. So what kinds of things do you use from your history communications degree?
I've always said I use my history background more than anything. I'd say you know what I mean? A lot of paper writing, research, that type of thing. Those are easily transferable skills to the workforce, researching, gathering data, using that to make, clear points, or supporting your arguments, or, making a case for something. Those are really transferable skills that you could use in business or any number of other fields. I think those are really universal tools that the kind of history and humanities liberal arts education gives you.
Okay. So like, if I could, so like when you're dealing with vendors, are you saying like, hey, I think your price on this is a little high, and that's
Mhm.
because I can get a comparable unit for 15% less over here? explain to me why I'm wrong. And then they might say, oh, well, we use better quality this or that. Or they say, oh, well, right.
Yeah.
Something like that. Is that about?
Yeah, so things like that, or just if we're trying to look and see how we're doing, like in sales for the year, or in terms of how our purchases look with a specific vendor, anything like that. We have to look at all that data, see where things are trending, and draw conclusions based on that. And a lot of it's looking at like past historical data. We can say, okay, we usually grow like 20% over this period. All right, where would that put us based on what we've done this year? And we can kind of look there and come to our conclusions based off of whatever information we have available.
Okay. So, and before we started, I guess I was thinking about, like, we have in history, we have now people can do like history communications, which has, been around basically as long as I have, for about 20 years. Howard Applegate introduced that major. And then we also have public policy and history business. And almost nobody has, I was always surprised. I would have thought more people would have done the history business part. So I guess maybe to the people who are basically out here thinking, oh, I don't want to go into that. I want to work in an archive, or I want to work in a museum. Pitch them on why maybe they're wrong, or why they'd want to give the business world a second look.
Yeah. I think it depends on what you want out of your quote job, I guess. Business, I would say, that there's a lot of potential for growth depending on your industry and the company that you're at. There's innumerable businesses that you can work for and apply that type of knowledge. But I would say, most things for the history specific field, like if you want to work in an archive, I think there's probably like, a finite amount of things in that field. And, at the end of the day, the paychecks in that field may not be what you want to be living on or thriving on, or whatever it may be.
It's a very polite way of saying it.
Right. But I think it's just kind of looking at the landscape and saying, hey, what, with my skill set, what's the most value I can derive from that? And I think the business field gives you plenty of opportunity and room to go with that and use your skills and kind of run with it. Your values kind of determined by you and what you bring to an organization. Right. So I understand being passionate about a certain field, or wanting to do something specific. And if you want to run into that wholeheartedly, I wouldn't tell you not to necessarily, but, maybe take a look at the whole picture. Your job's also not your entire life. So if you're kind of making your passion your job, I think that kind of maybe becomes your whole life. You can still have a job and have hobbies, and, you can volunteer at an archive, or, give museum
become a
tours,
docent.
or,
there's a, and if you're really successful, you'll be the person who, if you're really successful in the business world, then in 20 years, you might be the person who's the chairperson of the board, and you're the one who's saying, oh, there's a beautiful house that's a historical house. We need to, like, basically save this, use this as a kind of community center. I mean, so I think, yeah, I always think of myself as being the student who's like, no, I don't want to do, these things. And if you go into fields where you think money doesn't matter, ironically enough, you probably end up thinking more about money than somebody who doesn't go into those fields, because you're going to have a lot less of it. And then you're going to have to figure out, okay, how do I get housing and do all the things I want to do? And they might not be, how do I pay for my dog's vet bills, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
When I have I'm making $25,000 a year, it gets pretty dicey, as opposed to, so I think that's the perspective a middle-aged person has. That would be me, not you. But, I think, So and I guess I don't want to tell anybody what to do, but I think it's always nice to have options. You know, people, it's a lot easier to kind of go from the business world to the world of nonprofits than vice versa. It's not impossible to do either, but.
Right. Yeah. And I would say, you know, you always have more time to have hobbies, and, you know, try not to make your job your entire life. You know, earlier in my career, I think I spent too much time at work and thinking about work too much. You know, probably would have been better served, you know, leaving work that half hour early and going home and reading a book or relaxing or whatever.
Right.
You know, so budget time for yourself is another big thing. You know,
Right.
you want to work hard while you're at work and, you know, earn your money for sure. But, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, even to, you know, family owned businesses or whatever business you're in, you know, if you move on, they're going to replace you. So, you know.
Absolutely. There's an old expression that says the graveyard is full of irreplaceable men.
Yeah.
So, or irreplaceable people, I guess, in this day and age. So any advice for students who are history majors or, you know, or non-history majors? Because we do occasionally have people who are just taking it because they need a credit or they're in another field and somebody said, hey, you know, take this. So any advice in terms of internships, not internships, classes to take, classes to
Yeah,
avoid? Or
I would absolutely take an internship. Yeah, as many as you can do. You know, I know it's, you know, some of them pay, some of them don't. You know, and varying degrees of what they may pay. Some might just be for credit, but if you can swing it, I'd take an internship. You know, I think that job experience is good. If you don't have much currently, you know, just kind of getting used to seeing what the working world is like a little bit. But the bigger thing there is also just building connections. You know, helps you have something to put on a resume at the very least. And then, hey, maybe you met some people that might be able to get you into something you want to be in. Also, you don't know what you're really interested in until you're doing it, I would
right.
say. You know, and don't write things off. And, you know, an internship's a great opportunity to say, hey, I don't know if this is what I would want to do, but, you know, I'm going to give this place a shot. This sounds a little bit interesting to me. You know, it's kind of a nice, smaller commitment way to, you know, dip your toes in the water of a certain business or, you know, different field, whether it's something in media or whatever it is that you're interested in. You know, give it a try.
Sounds good. Sounds
Mm-hmm.
good. So like, I guess, so it's kind of a stupid question, but I guess there are no such thing as stupid questions. I've always been told, just stupid people who ask them. But so when you say, you know, the internships are usually valuable, is it because you have the work experience, because you have the connection with a supervisor, because you learn some skills? Like, I guess, how do you make that work for you?
Right. I think exposure to certain skills is certainly good. You know, being in my current job, I live in Excel, but, you know, through college, I never really used Excel or bothered to learn anything about it or,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I do very complicated things in Excel now and have just had to kind of like piece it together. I wish I had some more formal training in that. So like if I would have had an internship that, you know, taught me some more ins and outs of Excel or took a class, you know, something like that. But I interned at the Patriot News and Penn Live in Harrisburg, and did like page design for a summer for them. That was interesting. I got to learn all the programs they used and kind of how that world works and made some connections in that world. So that was always interesting. And it was a fun experience and it paid. So,
Right. And was that at all applicable to because you do a lot of web-based stuff?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of, we get like all we see web pages for like final review before they go live on a website for the items and categories that we manage. So I have to read through all the content, make sure it looks good, and then double check all the specs and, make sure the content people are phrasing things correctly for how this is going to be used and what the equipment's actually for, that type of stuff. So that type of like proofreading and, looking at the smaller detail type stuff, I got some experience there looking at print copy.
It's really cool. So have you ever been involved in on the hiring process or like hiring people into your company?
I've done like we do kind of like shadowings for some people. If they're we have a system where you can apply for up to like 4 jobs at one given time. And then we bring you in and you might be interviewed by 2 or 3 different people for those different jobs. And then you can do a shadowing of the positions to see what you're interested in. I've had a few people shadow with me. And then recently I've been asked to be a mentor for some newer people that have been at our company for, a few months or less, to kind of help them learn the ropes and, be a resource for them. So that's kind of my biggest exposure there. But
any advice? I'm sorry. Any advice for people in terms of like when they go into interview or when they're like in that kind of either internship or shadowing?
I would say research the company, whatever it is, before you go in, and try to know, read the job description, and bring questions about it, show that you're interested. If something isn't clear that they posted, or, it just sounds like a bunch of, colorful language that, you would rather actually know what the day-to-day kind of looks like. Ask for a shadowing opportunity if you're interested. A lot of places do offer that. In terms of that, I would say just make sure you know something about the company. Don't go in totally bewildered and have no idea what they do, who they are. Do what research you can. Use those skills you have to find information, and try to retain some of that when you go in, and then be confident in your skill set. They're looking for someone to fill a position, and you're probably bringing some good skills to the table. So, sell yourself and be confident in what you have to give them. They need someone to do this job. So, give them a reason to choose you.
That's really good advice, Cody. Thank you. So, okay, so I'm going to stop recording now unless you have any final words.
No, I think that should cover it.
Okay, good. All right.